Welcome to Engaging Culture, a podcast presented by Bridgeway Christian Church. I'm Brian Kiley. On today's episode, Pastor Lance Hahn and I are going to be talking about the Golden Globes. The 2020 Golden Globes happened just this week, and we're going to talk about what can we learn about our culture from what we saw at the Golden Globe Awards. All of that and more on this episode of Engaging Culture. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Engaging Culture Podcast. Brian Kiley here with Lance Hahn and his quarter zip sweater.
That is me. That is me. I know it is not a full zip sweater. I don't even understand how most fashion works, but I zip it up a little bit because I think I'm supposed to.
And just so we're clear, I'm not hating on it. It's a very sharp sweater.
Thank you very much.
I was just looking for something to say.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
and
that.
And that's what came to mind.
Yeah, well, great. I'm glad that when you look at me, that's what you notice.
There you go.
Not my stellar personality. Anyway, hi to everybody. Nice to see you. All those of you that are watching live, that's awesome. I appreciate it. And those of you that make comments, especially comments that are negative towards Brian Kiley.
Yeah, those are always welcome on our Facebook page and elsewhere. Personal email, also a good spot for those. Anyway, so on today's episode, we are talking about the Golden Globes. So Golden Globes just happened the other night, and we were talking before the show how last year we did an episode about the Super Bowl and how the point of doing an episode about the Super Bowl was not necessarily to talk about football, but was to talk about the fact that the Super Bowl is a significant cultural event. Cultural event. So we can learn a lot about our culture's values by observing what takes place in sort of the Super Bowl experience, everything surrounding the Super Bowl itself.
Right.
In a similar manner, we're not necessarily going to be talking about the quality of the different winners and things like that in terms of the Golden Globes. You could probably speak to that. You're a movie guy. I really can't. Not a movie guy at all. But there's a lot we can learn about cultural values and what's going on in the world around us, which is important for us to pay attention to as Christians, by looking at who won, by looking at the various issues that were raised. And there's just a lot there as somebody who, again, I'm not a movie person, but who sort of studied Sunday night's event from a cultural standpoint. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. So to start us off, just tell us a little bit real quick, what are the Golden Globes? Why do they matter? Why do people care?
Yeah, it's funny because this year I actually stumbled on them. I was sitting there with Susie and we just clicked channels and all of a sudden we went, oh, the Golden Globes are on. And it happened to be right at the beginning. So I got a chance to watch a lot of it live, but then I went back, obviously, for this episode and did some different research and learned a couple interesting things. So let's talk about it for a second. The Golden Globes, this is what always threw me off. I was like, what are the Golden Globes versus the Academy Awards? Because I feel like they're all the same thing. So the Golden Globes are movies and TV. They started as just movies. 1944, they started as just movies. They added in 1955 the TV concept. Now they're known as kind of the TV movie one, and then the Academy Awards are just movies, right?
Okay, yep.
So that's what's a little bit different. Now, the Academy Awards happened first. Those are the Oscars, if you're familiar with that. So that actually started in 1929. It's coming up on its 90th year, I believe.
Okay.
So the Golden Globes are designed out by a voting body called the Hollywood Foreign Press. Now, I was very confused, and I was sharing bad information on who they were because I didn't know. They're 93 members of journalists that write about the entertainment industries outside of America. So if they're looking in and they're commenting, because the majority of entertainment still comes out of America. And I just have to highlight this. I'm a huge entertainment guy. Yeah. I'm a huge movie and TV guy, have been my whole life. And it's not just that I enjoy it. It was woven into how I interacted with my dad, how I interacted with my siblings, and it still does. It's how I interact even with my own family around the table. We'll sit around the table at dinner time. We'll say, oh, did you see that? Or this show brought up this issue. So I'm really, really into it. But I will say that I believe deeply that the hand that rules Hollywood rules the world. And I'm going to say that phrase wherever I go because the influence of media is so powerful. So think about, like, for example, whenever you hear about a movie going out and it says, oh, it made $90 million in America and it made $310 million worldwide, the worldwide box office. What that means is it is massive around the world. The majority of what is seen about America, which is still a leading influencer in the world, is seen through movies and TV.
Yep.
Okay, so whatever happens in that very small part of the world, which is Hollywood, Southern California, and then where they make movies, which is on location, that influences topics, subjects, concepts. That's why this is such a big deal to me that we would talk about the Golden Globes.
Yeah, absolutely. The influence of Hollywood, both actual literal Hollywood, California, and sort of what it represents, is undeniable.
Yeah.
And whether you're a movie person or not, whether you watch a lot of television or not, it is important to recognize, like you said, the hand that rules Hollywood rules the world. And I think it was even interesting, and we'll get into this a little bit later, a number of award winners spoke about the formative influence of television in their lives, in much the same way that you just did just now, far beyond, I mean, television gets a bad rap, and for many very legitimate reasons, right?
Sure.
But that it is meaningful for good or for ill, in a lot of different ways, and for that reason, it is worth sort of paying attention to or having some knowledge about it. If, as Christians, we are going to understand the world in which we live and the culture around us. So
media both reflects and drives culture.
Yes.
So in one way, it is simply a mirror.
Yes.
That it's talking about, just whether you look at what is being talked about in music today, that's going to reflect what's going on in the culture. If we're going to look at and say, well, what's on TV, a lot of it reflects. But at the same time, it is an influential instrument that can lead, because we all know that the influence is strongest on who's telling the story. Right? So if, you know how you've always heard the idea of history will depend on who's telling it.
Right.
If they will include some pieces and exclude other pieces.
Right.
But if you think about the amount of television that people watch, the amount of movies that they go to, they're spending more time being discipled by Hollywood than they're discipled by anybody else, including parents.
Big time.
Right?
Yeah, that is absolutely true.
On that, so when I look at the Golden Globes, quite frankly, once we get into a lot of the different awards and the commercials and everything, I get bored, right? So I really love the intro monologues. I love the acceptance speech. I love the big awards. I love those types of things.
Yeah.
But I can't really go through a 3-hour Golden Globes. One of the biggest things that Ricky Gervais was constantly highlighting this year was how long that show is. And he's like, this could all be done in a half hour. And they kept dragging it out.
Yes, that is certainly true. And it was pretty funny, hearing the host of the show pretty much from the jump.
Yes.
As I work in a sports reference to our thing about movies. But from the beginning, essentially bemoaning what a long and drawn out and boring affair it was, which is an odd thing for the host of the program to say. So that gets us into kind of our first subject here, and that is, let's talk a little bit about Ricky Gervais. He is a comedian, a provocateur, if you will, and he was hosting the Golden Globes for the 5th time.
Yes.
What did you make of his whole "I don't care" bit? Because that was very prevalent in the opening monologue.
So he kept joking that he's like, listen, this is the last time I'm doing this. It's the 5th time. And he always goes up there with like a beer, right? So it looks like he's just drinking it throughout the whole night. And he was playing off, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. Well, that was just his shtick, right? I mean, does he really care? Kinda. I mean, it's a very lucrative job.
Sure.
Right? So I'm sure he likes the job.
Yeah.
But that was kind of his thing, is messing around. I don't really care about that. What it means is I'm about to drop some bombs, and if you have a concern about it, don't even come to me with it. Right. So it was a little bit of a wall up. Now, in my opinion, what Ricky Gervais and usually any of the hosts do is actually the most insightful piece of the entire evening. So I want to sit for a moment with his jokes, his monologues. So
absolutely.
A real quick thing about humor. Humor is a way that I've always coped with life, and to me, if there's not a lot of humor in it, I get bored pretty easy.
Yep, me too.
Just in life, and so it's a de-stressor for me. So I have always had high regard for humor. Certain types of humor I enjoy more than others. Like some people are into slapstick, some people are into the witty things, some people are into dry humor. But what I've always done is I have looked through what a comedian is trying to say.
Yeah.
Because the commentary that they make is very, very powerful.
Yes.
Now, many people are turned off immediately either by the controversy or the language or the crassness that's used. And don't get me wrong, if you go back and there are some people that listen to this show and watch us record this, that this would offend you in a very significant way.
Yeah.
He uses different, they have to bleep out language and he's super crass.
Yeah.
So instead of, for me anyway, I can just say for me, I actually look through all of that and I'm looking at the content of what is being talked about.
Yeah.
And to me, it is super powerful.
Right.
It's the same way I think in other podcasts we've talked about the power of rap music.
Yep.
The power of country lyrics.
Yeah.
The power of, in music, when they start talking about really deep things, but they're masking it with a lot of foul language or whatever, people dismiss it. And you go, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
You just missed a huge issue.
Right. Yeah. If we're allowing that to dismiss it outright, you're absolutely right. We miss what is, kind of what is being said, and that there is an important message. And I think even on some level, behind Ricky's "I don't care" shtick, I think you're absolutely right. It's a bit of a wall to kind of just let critics know, like, listen, think what you want. I'm not going to engage with that. But I also think that there's even something in that that it almost opens a doorway for him to speak a little bit more honestly.
Oh yeah.
And and that sort of paved the way for several of the jokes that he made, where he really went after a lot of people, right? And some of it was the silly thing where he's saying, Baby Yoda is sitting at the table with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and he goes, "Oh, whoops, that's Joe Pesci."
That's Joe Pesci,
right?
Right.
But he also made a lot of significant comments on sort of different cultural issues. So I have a few things that he said. I want to maybe start with you, though. What was maybe a joke that he said, or maybe something that he brought up that was interesting or powerful to you?
Well, so kind of setting the tone, he said this phrase. He said, if you win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech.
Yeah.
He's basically said, thank your God, thank your agent, and get out of here.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody kind of laughed. And then he added to it, he said, you are in no position, any of you in this room, to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Right. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. Now, obviously, he took this big mirror and shined it right back at Hollywood.
Yeah.
And he said, the fact that we are all, and he didn't talk about this, but I don't know if you noticed recently, Rose McGowan made a very inflammatory tweet or post.
I haven't seen that, no.
Yeah, so Rose McGowan is an actress.
Right.
And it went viral because she posted out this huge thing that said, Iran, don't kill us. We're being held hostage by Trump.
Yeah.
And it was so, the fact that an actress could make a statement about something happening politically and it's everywhere shows you the power of Hollywood.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So he then grabs it and he's making fun of the fact that everybody wants to legitimize themselves and put on a stamp of I'm for this issue, this issue, this issue.
Yep.
I'm going to talk about politics. And you go, you're an actor, right?
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean they can't have opinions.
Right.
I think that sports figures are allowed to have opinions too.
Right.
But when there becomes a self-importance thing, he started poking fun at that right off the bat.
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, just do what you do. Quit trying to be more than you are.
Right.
Which I thought was rather interesting to a very self-important group.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a few aspects of that that are interesting to me that I want to talk about. Okay. So first of all, the whole hey, don't use your platform to make a political speech thing.
Right.
Okay. Fine. I get that there are lots of people that tune into these things and would rather not hear celebrities advocate for causes that they care about. But this is what drives me crazy about the whole hey, you're an athlete, just stick to what you do.
Right.
Or, hey, you're an entertainer. This is how I understand is how I'm supposed to react when a celebrity makes a statement about a controversial issue. If I agree with them, I am supposed to applaud them for their courage to speak out and to be brave.
Yes.
If I disagree with them, it's like, oh yeah, fun, stick with what you're doing, just stop it. And that is to me so small and narrow-minded.
Yeah.
And that's what drives me crazy is that, listen, you mean to tell me that all of these conservative people that are just all up and, we hate Hollywood, stop telling us what you think and just get your award and get off. You mean to tell me that they'd be saying the same thing if Hollywood was super conservative?
Right.
Nope. They wouldn't.
Yeah.
Now, if you would, and you're in the minority who can actually think objectively about these things, good on you.
Yeah.
And would liberals be celebrating the courage of all of these people in Hollywood if they were speaking about conservative? No, they wouldn't.
No.
So now Ricky Gervais is making a joke. So I'm not saying this to be critical of him. I'm saying this to be critical of the just people who get all bent out of shape because we don't like that it's political. No, that is nonsense. You don't like it because it challenges your beliefs. And rather than actually have your beliefs challenged, you just want to shut down the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's the end of my rant on that.
Yes.
So here's my other thing though, is so to get back to what exactly he said, he made a pretty Here, I'm just going to read this directly from transcript. He says, Apple roared into the TV game with The Morning Show, a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. Well, you say you're, and then people, reacted. And then he says to the people in the room, he says, well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you?
Right.
Which is funny.
And
then he goes on and makes the Greta Thunberg joke.
Yes.
And sort of the crescendo of all of that was the part that you referenced. So if you win, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and
get out.
Edit, go away. And
right.
So the point in that is sort of interesting to me, where it's like, okay, he's basically saying, listen, you're all a bunch of hypocrites because you're working for these huge companies that are doing terrible things in the world, so don't tell us about being a good person.
Right.
If I could just boil it down to its essence. And then there was also the thing about the Hollywood Foreign Press, out of concern for climate change, which is a very real issue and a very pressing concern in the world, had a plant-based meal, but then also imported flowers from Ecuador and Italy to be in the room. So this I'm raising a bunch of different issues here, but my where I wrestle with this is, first of all, yes, the hypocrisy of the flowers versus the meal is funny to me. But the question is okay, what qualifies us to speak about issues that matter? How perfect does my moral life have to be before I'm allowed to speak into
anything
issues?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's where is it? I don't know. What do you think about this?
Well, I do think that some things are weighted. I do think that people that are experts in an area, when they comment on something, I think it should have more weight than somebody that is flippantly commenting on something. I mean, that's just a wisdom piece.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people that are observing that can just have an opinion by saying, listen, I'm seeing a general truth, I'm allowed to comment on that. I don't think they should be just shut down just because they're not an expert.
Right.
Then everybody just walks around very silent. And I don't think that that's how we develop and discern how to live, right? So I think a lot of people need to talk. I do think that hypocrisy does shut down, at least for me, a desire to hear that person speak more.
Yeah.
If I feel like somebody, now remember, hypocrisy is not inconsistency.
Right.
I think that the fact that there's inconsistency in terms of the flowers versus the meal and that kind of thing, there was an inconsistency there, and it was probably two different groups that were in charge of those things.
Right.
But hypocrisy means you've put on a mask, meaning you're doing an intentional leading astray.
Right.
When I feel that and I feel like somebody's playing me, then I'm not going to listen to their opinion as much. So I do think hypocrisy has an impact.
Sure. But I think that's a helpful kind of delineation you made there between hypocrisy and inconsistency.
Yes.
On some level, we're all inconsistent. And many of us are doing things unknowingly that violate the very moral ideas that we would stand for, right? But it's one thing to purposefully I just thought of a dumb Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reference that I'm not going to share because it's
done.
stupid. But restraint is a good thing.
Edit.
But I think that issue of if you are going to make statements and you are going to make them publicly in a large setting, there does need to be some manner of care given to, okay, am I backing up what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or am I opening myself up to the charge of hypocrisy? Now, what bugs me sometimes is that when a statement will be made by somebody or an issue will be raised, and rather than grappling with that issue, critics will then say, well, wait, what about the way you think about this?
Yes.
Right? Like Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors, just raised issues about the truthfulness of presidents in times of war, which I don't know. Like, presidents lie when wars are going on. Like, it's just a fact. Like, it's just the truth. It's been true forever. Like, that is a very non-controversial idea to me. But critics have come after him for saying that now with all the Iran stuff going on. And they've said, well, hey, why didn't you speak up more with issues related to China? Like, that's a fair criticism to say, why didn't he speak up more on issues related to China? But that's not what he's talking about right here.
Right.
And I think that can be problematic. But
no, for sure. So jumping back for a second into the power of what Ricky Gervais was talking about is if you listen to it carefully, he basically was rehashing the year's news.
Yes.
Right? So he would do a rapid fire joke. And what he was doing is recapping all the uncomfortable things. So, for example, he said, I arrived in a limo today. My license plate was made by Felicity Huffman. And he meant that she was in jail, right?
Okay.
That is the college scandal, right? So you had somebody that was paying money and bribing a way in to get their kids into a fancy college. So he immediately makes that joke. Well, remember, she's tied to Hollywood. Her husband is a big actor, right? And I believe she's an actor as well. I can't even remember. But the other thing is, then he mentions Jeffrey Epstein. He said, and at the end of this movie or TV show, the guy didn't really kill himself, just like Jeffrey Epstein. Which, of course, highlights the fact that people were saying, here's a pedophile that was put into jail. He dies while they're supposed to be watching him. Oh my gosh, what was the thing going on there?
Right.
But he does it in one line. And everybody all of a sudden goes back and they go, wow, that was a cultural reference. Right?
And there are layers to it.
There's layer everywhere. That's what I find so brilliant is that, and then he said, oh, you guys are all just mad because you had to find your own way here. Like, you didn't take Jeffrey's plane. Meaning they've all been in cahoots with this guy for a long time.
Right.
And then he did, even in his joking, so a lot of what happened during it was a roasting.
Right.
You roast people. Now, in a roast, you're just supposed to insult people in a witty way. That's all a roast is, right? Well, he did this one, and he said, like, for example, he said to Leonardo DiCaprio, he said, you were he said, the movie you were in was almost 3 hours. By the time you finished the premiere, his girlfriend was now too old for him to date. Okay. And then, so we could just leave it there. And he was poking fun because really he's calling him out for being such an older gentleman dating such young girls.
Dates younger women.
But then he take it one step further. And he said, even Prince Albert is saying, buddy, back off, you're almost 50. Well, Prince Albert was tied to the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. And so there's all these layers, and he is blasting Hollywood people and calling out their garbage. And he's like, whoa, do not play like you're not a part of all this.
Right.
You're a part of the news. So I find that, to people that obviously weren't in the room, we're uproariously laughing because we're going, oh, dang, that must have hurt, right? But these people are in the room.
Right.
They're right in front of them. And so anyway.
It's gutsy, man.
It's really gutsy.
But it's smart humor, too. Like, it's humor that's point. Now, okay, so I want to talk about one other element of his monologue, and certainly your opinion on this subject as someone who watches more movies than me, carries more weight than mine. But he referenced Martin Scorsese. And Martin Scorsese, who is a brilliant filmmaker, right? And he says, again quoting, Martin Scorsese made news for his controversial comments about the Marvel franchise. He says they're not real cinema and they remind him about theme parks. And then he goes on to make a joke about Martin Scorsese. Why is he hanging out in theme parks? But my question I want to ask is, we are in this sort of interesting age right now where there's tons of superhero movies, tons of Marvel movies, I mean, sequels on top of sequels, and all these different characters are getting their own movie. Not only am I not a movie guy, I'm not a Marvel guy. So we're just having like layers of disinterest for me here. But these movies obviously do extremely well.
Yes.
What does it tell us about our culture that these types of superhero movies are so wildly popular.
Yeah. So, of course, I am a Marvel guy, right? Everybody knows that in a variety of ways. So this just adds into the intensity for me.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that the idea of craving heroes has always been in humanity. Yeah. We always need heroes. Yeah. We need hope. We need belief. We need these types of things. But in times of difficulty, heroes are more needed. So interestingly enough, and this is what I found out in my research. So interesting timeline that the Golden Globe started in 1944.
Okay.
What was going on was it was the World War II.
Yeah.
And they literally started it by saying, we are all so down. We need to get our eyes on something else that's positive. We need to get our eyes onto something entertaining that's not so heavy. We're going to start highlighting movies.
Interesting.
Which is really fascinating that it was based on let's restore the hero in times of difficulty.
Yeah.
So when you have these Marvel franchises and heroes just change form, the Marvel superhero is the overt hero of right now.
Yeah.
That will change again.
Right.
For a long time, it was the dirty, hairy, vigilante hero.
Right.
It was kind of the anti-hero.
Yeah.
And then for a while, it was a Cinderella type hero.
Yeah.
And then so it will always shift.
Yeah.
Right now, I think in a divided nation where everybody is really struggling, one of the things that superheroes do is either they're Captain America, where they're embodying a nation being proud of something, or they're worldwide.
Yeah.
So, for example, you'll have Captain Marvel, who that's a female now in this genre.
Yeah.
And she guards the universe, meaning it's not about one country. Yeah. It's a bigger world picture and beyond our world into the solar system. Yeah. So you have heroes watching over Earth collectively. And you go, there's something in there when you're talking about climate change and you're talking about divisiveness and you're talking about political wars and you're talking, right?
Right.
Heroes make things safer.
Yeah.
And you can start cheering for something as opposed to always being disappointed in something.
Right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that, and I think that is interesting, and it is especially interesting to go back and look at, like you said, how it started in the 40s, where we needed heroes in a very different and certainly a time in world history that was tragic and obviously difficult. I wonder also in the midst, obviously, yes, we're divided and different, and I think there's something to be said for, hey, I want to take a break from the heavy stuff and just go watch something that's not gonna challenge my opinions or where I'm having to defend myself and different things. And certainly I can resonate with it. I mean, part of why I watch sports, right? Is for that same thing. But I also wonder, beyond just the divisiveness in our culture, I think the isolation in our culture as well, that there's something in us that, depression's on the rise, anxiety's on the rise, and lots of studies show this has to do with isolation and too much time on screens and everything else. I almost wonder if it's also our superhero niche right now is reflective of a desire to sort of be part of a bigger story that gets us outside of ourselves a little bit, which I think obviously
very thickly,
big time. Which I think there's certainly crossover within. You talk about these movies versus kind of the Christian story and Jesus's invitation for us to be part of something that's bigger than ourselves.
Right.
I almost wonder if there's an impulse that God has placed in our hearts that is, and I don't say this to criticize the movies. I think the movies are fine, but it's almost like part of why these hero movies are so popular is because of something God has placed in our hearts to be part of something bigger than ourselves, where we can really follow a superhero who is beyond us. I don't know.
Okay, well, there's an even more overt thing than that. So one of the biggest franchises right now is Avengers, and the other big one that was right before that was the X-Men.
Yeah.
And what those are both based on the premise of is people that are different finding family.
Yeah.
They come together in a team. No one else understands them. And it's so heavy that in the movies, they will go through something difficult. They will be tempted to isolate. and one of the other members comes out and brings them in.
Yeah.
So the whole concept of togetherness and we have to do this not alone, and I'm going to lift you up when you're down, that is a major theme in all of those Marvel movies.
Yeah.
So it is a direct reference to a craving to belong.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's huge. Let me go on to a couple other things.
Yep.
Another thing that he poked fun at that I thought was absolutely brilliant is he goes, well, this year they wanted to do a memoriam section about people that had passed away.
Gosh.
And he said, and I looked at the list of who had died this last year, and it was not diverse enough. It was a bunch of white people, and I thought, oh no, not on my watch. And he was poking fun of the idea of who had died wasn't diverse enough.
Right.
And of course, nobody chooses to die. And so him making this whole comment about saying we're all so sensitive to diversity.
Yeah.
And the whole thing of, we're putting everything up on a pedestal. It's like, God, even enough colored people weren't dying. I mean, it's literally what he's trying to say. They're all white.
Right.
And so he's like, well, I'm not doing that then. That type of humor to point out, wow, we are super sensitive on these issues, and we will cut out massive things just to try to accommodate.
Right.
Now, do I think that we need to talk about racial tensions and of course, I talk about them here at the church.
Totally.
I have a huge part of my ministry that's invested in that.
Yeah.
But I still love the poking fun to go, come on, at some point, certain things get a little extreme.
Right. And when you're, I want to say this correctly, when you're seeking diversity in sort of an artificial way, then it's like that's not real. That's not really seeking diversity. Now, I think you could make the argument that the reason why, and obviously he's joking, the reason why the in memoriam section was all white people is because we've just paid attention to white people this whole time.
Yes.
But yes, I thought it was a pretty funny jab he made it. If you're making jokes about the people who died montage.
Yeah. He was blowing
that's some skill and some, just nothing is sacred, I guess.
Totally. Now, going into kind of a short list of different issues that were highlighted.
Yes.
Right? So one of them that you're always going to see highlighted in the Hollywood world is the LGBTQ issue, right? Because that is a place where not only is it and has it been historically embraced in an increasing fashion, but it is now something they're very, very proud of.
Yes.
So, for example, 2 big awards were given out at the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
One of them was to Tom Hanks, which I believe was a Cecil B. DeMille award. And then one was given to Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah.
And in that, what was intriguing was her acceptance speech. First of all, super witty.
Yeah.
She's brilliant, by the way. But it was interesting because she talked a lot about people know her. Right? Once again, talking about this loneliness and isolation, she brought up this issue and she goes, well, I just love that you guys all know me. And then she goes, I'd like to thank my husband, Mark, and the 2 kids. You need to go to bed. And of course, she doesn't have any. She's a lesbian married to another woman.
Right.
And so she was highlighting out that you know me so well that you know I have a traditional family. Oh, no, I don't. So she was pointing that out. She talked about she had a sitcom and lost it when she came out of the closet.
Yeah.
When she revealed that she was LGBTQ, she lost her job.
Right.
And so it shows it wasn't that long ago when there wasn't quite the affirmation publicly.
Right.
There always was behind closed doors.
Right.
But then she explained, now she's a megastar very clearly as an LGBTQ. Oh, man. I keep getting those wrong.
I gotcha.
LGBTQ. There you go. Okay. Anyway, but here's the other thing that was interesting. The movie Rocket Man won a number of acclaim awards and specifically a key award in the Golden Globes.
Right.
But they brought out Elton John and Bernie Taupin.
Yeah.
And Elton John walked out and he said, we have something very rare in Hollywood, which is, super interesting because the amount of homosexuality in Hollywood is so thick that everyone was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, we have a 52-year marriage. Mm-hmm. And it kind of caused everybody to gasp. Of course, he was highlighting one issue while poking at the infidelity and the the constant failure of marriages in Hollywood.
Right.
And he was going, listen, for those that are challenging me, and this is the underlying tone,
Sure.
for those that would challenge me and say, I'm not traditionally in a marriage, my marriage has lasted longer than the traditional marriage. There's all this heavy commentary that was dropped in one bomb.
Yeah.
So this is why when you watch it, it's not just about movies and TV.
Yep.
There's all these layers of commentary going on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that was my thought.
No, you're absolutely right, and it is powerful to hear somebody get up in that room,
right,
and talk about a 50-year plus marriage. And I think I want to talk about Tom Hanks in a minute, so I'm just going to leave that there. But I want to go back to Ellen DeGeneres and Kate McKinnon, who introduced her. Which Kate McKinnon, her range as an actress,
we got to give her props.
Unbelievable. I watch Saturday Night Live every once in a while, and just the range of characters that she portrays
she's so
is
smart.
Stunning to me. So her ability, and I'm not saying anything about what she stands for, her ideology, any of that. I'm talking strictly her
talent.
ability as an actress is remarkable to me. I thought that her introduction of Ellen was powerful, and I think speaks to some of the power of media. Now, we've talked about LGBTQ issues on this podcast. We did a whole series here at Bridgeway, and we're pretty clear where we stand, in the sense that we're not affirming, in the sense that we believe that lifestyle is God's best for humanity.
Right.
However, we also want to say we want to make sure that people who are in that lifestyle are cared for and loved, and certainly issues like suicide and depression in that community are of significant concern.
Absolutely.
Right? And we want, and I thought it was so powerful to me to hear Kate reflect on her life as a young person, figuring out her own identity, and then being able to see Ellen on the screen and kind of realize, like, okay, maybe there's a place for me in the world, which we can agree or disagree on people's choices. We can agree or disagree on the way people choose to live their lives. And I think there's room for that and room for conversation. But what I would hope we would say is, unless we're talking about people that are like, well, I saw a murderer on TV and thought I can go murder people, you know, unless we're talking about people that are really being destructive, I would hope that we could celebrate the fact that a person who was struggling, because she was clear that she was struggling, was able to see somebody struggling in public and draw some inspiration from that, and to realize maybe there's a place for me in the world. Like, to me, that's really powerful. And again, agree, disagree with Ellen and what she stands for, and with Kate. That level of, okay, maybe there's a place for me, I found that to be very moving.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Completely agree. A couple other things that got brought up. Climate change was brought up a number of different times in different ways, mostly through the wildfires of Australia.
Yep.
So that was a concept that was brought up a lot. Sam Mendes, in his short talk, ended up talking about war. He's saying, listen, my grandfather was in war, and that was a horrible time. I hope that never happens again. Well, of course, he's commenting on current political activity, predominantly with Iran, right? That type of thing. Michelle Williams talked about equal rights for women, equal pay, and the right to choose. Now, I read an article on this about how kind of odd and not necessarily hypocritical, but inconsistent that Michelle, there's a bunch of weird things that go on with her life about choosing and infidelity and adultery and all kinds of, it was just very odd. But she was bringing out the issue of equal pay. Now, in 2017, Ricky Gervais hosted, I believe, as well. And in one of his things about monologue is he goes, we really need to talk about the issue of equal pay. And he said, which, I don't know if that's necessarily true, because Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, who hosted last year, are making the same as me. Now, and he goes, no, that's together. They just wanted to split it. That's fine.
That's funny.
And he's just being, and he goes, it's true. At the end, like, just going, no, seriously, that really happened. And it's that funny way, but yet bringing up such a sensitive issue of saying, wow, we still don't have equality. When it comes, that has been a big issue. If you want to know what, and you go, well, it's what the liberal thing. If you want to know what is a big deal on, or concerns for the liberal side and view of the world, you can watch a show like this. It will highlight them one after the other. And it goes, this is a concern, this is a concern, this is a concern. Now, whether or not you go, I don't like the liberal agenda, I don't like a Democratic ticket, I don't like whatever you think. Look at the issue and go, is something wrong here?
Yeah.
And the reality for me is I champion that idea of going, listen, I desperately want equal pay for an equal job between women and men. That's something that's personal to me. I don't happen to have a big liberal agenda. I don't happen to be a big Democrat. But I just look at issues and I went, man, I love that they're highlighting that this matters.
Wait, you mean to tell me you can like care about issues and not just be totally influenced by loyalty to a political party?
Right. Weird.
Imagine
that.
Yeah, and it's and I agree with you. I mean, I think that I know nothing about Michelle Williams. I couldn't even told you who she was before watching her speech. I'm not with her on the pro-choice thing, like at all.
Sure.
And that was ultimately the crescendo of her speech. So totally disagree with her on that issue. However, everything up to that point, I thought was powerful and moving. And the idea of even her speaking to women, and I'm going to assume that she's very liberal. So it is what it is. And I'm not meaning to endorse that by any means or any other agenda. But I think just that message to women of saying like, listen, men have sort of made the world in their own image for a really long time. And that has created some problems for us as women. So women, let's try to create a world that looks more like us.
That was so good.
Even as a male, right, to see who recognizes the need for that. I thought that was a really powerful statement for her to make. And again, I'm not going to endorse a political side in this, but I think to say wherever you want to vote ideologically, to say that, we're in a place in society, we need to do more to get women equal pay. We need to have women who are Republicans and Democrats who are representing us more at high levels of government. That's an important issue, and I'm glad that she raised that.
Yeah, it's appropriate respect. The last thing on this issue, and we don't have to go out on all the issues. We can go back. I do have a couple comments on kind of what I think the bigger picture is on who wins and why, stuff like that.
Sure.
But Patricia Arquette, she said, let us all vote this next coming election so that we give our kids a better world. So that was one other issue. So kind of the reason, hopefully, if you have continued on in this podcast with us, you realize the Golden Globes aren't just about movies. I mean, it is brought up so many hot topics and all these different things that it's so much bigger than that. Anyway, I just wanted to highlight that was another one I saw.
That's absolutely true. So I want to talk about, I mentioned him a minute ago. I want to talk about Tom Hanks.
Yeah, please do.
Who, even though I don't watch a lot of movies, I've seen a lot of Tom Hanks movies because he's been in a lot of movies. And
I did not watch his speech.
He's obviously incredible as an actor. Well, he's had this unbelievable career in Hollywood, A-list on top of A-list, one of the biggest names. And what I love, there's so much I loved about his speech, is that first of all, he got up and he talked immediately about his family. And he talked about his wife and 5 kids. And he acknowledged that he has work that takes him away, and they put up with him being gone a lot. But at the end of the day, he just said, how lucky you could possibly be. A man is blessed with a family sitting down front like that, a wife who is fantastic in every way, who has taught me what love is, 5 kids who are braver and stronger and wiser than their old man, and a loving group of people who have put up with me, et cetera, et cetera. I just thought that was amazing. You talk about, again, it was with all of the sort of the philandering and relational instability and everything like that that happens in Hollywood, that we're able to celebrate a man who cares deeply about his family. I thought was very powerful and was really wonderful to hear. And then I love that here's this guy who could be, if there was ever somebody who could just be like, I'm entitled to kind of everything, he talked about doing the work and caring. He talked about being an actor who shows up on time and doesn't making some, assistant come and knock on your door and say, hey, we're ready for you now. He talked about hard work and about doing things the right way. And to me, whether we're talking about movies or politics or sports or any other sort of public setting, those are the sorts of people who I want to champion, who care about doing the work, who care about doing things the right way, who don't think they're better than anybody, who invest in their families. And it was And even he got choked up and he blamed it on, he had a cold and was taking medicine, so he blamed it on the cold medicine. But just the emotion in that was really, really moving. And of all the different speeches I watched and articles I read, that to me was one of the most powerful elements of the whole night.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Okay, so what else do you got? What else do you want to talk about
Anyway,
here?
just one final thing is that when I talk about that movies and everything both comment on society and lead society. So, for example, one of the big things about the emergence of a viewpoint towards LGBTQ is all of a sudden you started seeing characters show up in different TV shows. Yeah. That was commenting that they exist out there and they were trying to give them a certain voice.
Right.
But you realize if there's a group of 4 and one of them, that's 25%. Well, that's not reflective of society. So they weren't merely mirroring. Right. They were leading out and saying, this needs to be accepted. So they're making comments.
Yes.
Well, in the same way, I feel that those who win the awards are given to certain things. And I don't think, as much as it would be nice to believe that everybody was only doing it off the artistic integrity, I don't think everyone that wins always for the reason that theirs was either the best movie or they did the best job.
Totally. No question.
There are a lot of them that are, like, for example, I don't know necessarily if there was the best picture this year was 1917, which is a World War I film.
Right.
I'm not so sure there was a big meaning behind that. But, like, for example, the best picture was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So you have best picture drama and best picture comedy or musical. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is kind of a history of the 60s and the 70s trying to go back through Hollywood. Well, it was very self-serving. It was all about Hollywood. So I don't think it was like, this is the best. It's not a great movie. It's it's really boring. Is it acted well? Yes. I mean, are there interesting things about it? Yeah. But it's really not that great of a film. But it was Quentin Tarantino. Yeah. And they also have a certain place of going, well, we didn't get you last year, we'll get you this year. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's always that.
Yeah.
But the part that I find interesting is if you'll notice a bunch of different things being highlighted together. So, for example, you'll go, okay, there's a lot of these movies that have this theme. They always win. That's the part that's a little bit odd. I even went back to 2019 and 2018 and was looking at all the winners of the Academy Awards and the Golden Globes, and there's themes that kind of go through. And you go, if it's that thick of a theme, it's probably not that just the movie was great.
Oh, sure.
They were pushing something that they went, we want to affirm that.
Yeah.
So we're going to give it props.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, is that a problem in your view? I mean,
okay, so it is a problem in my view.
Yeah.
Now you go, well, that's because they don't always necessarily promote the things that you're into. We could say that, but honestly, for me, it's about the integrity because I love movies so much.
Yeah.
To me, it's a violation of the integrity of going, can you just call the best work the best work?
Right.
Can you call the best movie? For example, this year, it was Best Animated Film, right? And so it had Toy Story 4, which was one of the highest grossing movies of all time.
Yep.
And Frozen 2, and they gave the award to Missing Link that no one saw. And I didn't even bother seeing it, and I'm a huge fan of animated films.
Yeah.
Now, was it a good movie? Sure. I'm assuming
Maybe.
it is.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It won an award. It probably wasn't terrible.
What I'm telling you is it the best animated film of the entire year? You have these huge, massive works with the and that's the kind of stuff that you go, I just wish they would actually give it. And this is the same way, going back to your realm. When awards are given for Hall of Fame or whatever and all this stuff, there's always these asterisks everywhere. You know what I mean? On all the sports stuff. It's kind of like you're handing out an award, but you know that they're going, I'll give a nod to your guy this time. You do it for my guy this time. there's always these give and take things.
Yeah, there's this whole sort of internal politics that surround it, and I agree with you. That bums me out. I agree with you. I think that, and I, you know, I asked, do you see it as a problem? And I'm with you. I think it's a big problem. I think that maybe this is a little cynical. I think the sad reality is I don't know that it's a solvable problem because on some level we're all taking our own biases into analyzing pretty much anything. But you're right, and I agree with you. I wish that we could have a little bit more faith that so, for example, if I go see a Best Picture winner for the Academy Awards or the Golden Globes, am I going to walk out thinking, man, that was an incredible movie?
Yes.
I don't have a huge level of confidence in that. Now, you might just say, well, that's because you're uncultured and can't follow a deep and moving story. Maybe that's true. But maybe it's because we're giving these awards to movies in part. Now, is it good to acknowledge movies that are promoting important causes? Sure. But does that make it the best movie, kind of to your point?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it does.
I like the integrity of awards, but the other problem is it depends. When you say something is the best, how biased does it have to be? Because what is the best? What do you mean the best? So, for example, one of the big award winners recently was the one that was filmed in Sacramento.
Lady Bird.
Lady Bird.
Yeah.
I couldn't hang with it at all. I thought it was horrible, and I only saw portions of it, and I gave up. And I don't ever give up on movies. And
that's funny.
Okay, now artistically. And that's the problem, is it all depends on who's watching the film.
Right.
Because some people artistically were going, well, this was shattering all these different stereotypes of different things, and this was breaking through, and it was showing a gritty side, and it was saying that it was filmed not in one of the normal locations. The art of it, I think, is what ultimately got the attention.
Yeah.
And I think that that's good.
Yeah.
But you can have all the pieces right and still go, wow, that did not impact my life, did not change anything. You go, what wasn't made for you?
Right.
Okay. So what's the best?
Yeah. Well, and that's the subjectivity of art, right?
Yes,
like what is good music? We don't all agree on that. What is a good movie? We don't. I mean, now there are certainly principles we can, know, that would make for good art and good movies and everything else. But yeah, we're not what you think is great might not be what I think is great, and vice versa, which,
Well, and I don't think it should be biased on my view of great.
Totally.
I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah.
If it was like, if I constantly looked at it and was like, oh, all my favorite movies won, I would say something's wrong. Something's biased. What I'm merely saying is that when you start seeing distortion themes, that's the part that gets me.
Yep. Yeah. No, absolutely. So yeah. I mean, did you see that did you see that reflected in who won different awards? I think from my standpoint as an outsider to the kind of that world, it certainly seemed like you did. And yeah, it is a little bit of a bummer, but I don't know. What's the answer to that? I'm not really sure.
Well, I think the other thing that would be troublesome is if things are handed out or awards are given merely of going, okay, so you're going to now open a door for me in another area.
Right.
That kind of, I don't know, favoritism, or I'm not sure what I want to say about that.
Yeah.
But
so I have one last thing I want to talk about. Did you have anything else?
No, I'm done.
Okay, so just to kind of bring this back to the faith realm here. As Christians, and we spoke to this a little bit at the beginning of the episode, why is it worth our time to pay attention to and understand the different issues that are raised in award shows, both from the films that win and from the speeches being made? Why, first of all, my two questions. Why is it important that we engage and actually pay attention to those things? And then two, how is it that we can engage with those things as Christians as opposed to simply as Americans or as conservatives or as liberals or whatever? So why is it important, and how do we engage with these things in sort of a Christ-centered manner?
Yeah, the first thing is we're always going to walk this weird line of being in the world but not of the world. Yeah. And what that means is people go, well, if I'm going to watch that award show, I'm only going to get slimed by garbage.
Yeah.
Well, quite frankly, you're going to get slimed by garbage walking down the street.
Yeah.
So because you're going to get hit by advertising. God does not call us to hide out in a fortress. We are to be shining lights in the world. Well, the only way you can shine is if it's dark around you, right? So if you're always in light and then you're a light, you're not very helpful. So I think that it doesn't mean that we only, slum right in our lives. What it means is you got to know what's going on. Because here's the other thing that I hear a lot from Christians is, wow, that caught me off guard. I didn't even see that coming. Now there's a big new law that is affecting my faith.
Right.
And you go, what do you mean you didn't see that coming?
Yeah.
Man, you saw that coming a million miles away if you would have been paying attention to the news,
Right.
if you would have paid attention to culture, if you would have paid attention, and then we claim ignorance. Oh, this all just came out of nowhere.
Right.
No. God, just even wisdom, gave you this long view to go, here it's coming.
Yep.
So I think that all Christians need to know what's going on. Now, if we want to make it super religious, you go so that you might be able to pray about those issues.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think a lot of Christians are watching it and then praying about it. I think we should.
Yeah.
When you say, how do you engage with it as a Christian as opposed to just a person, I would say that everything is reviewed through a biblical lens, right? So when I hear something from Ricky Gervais and you go, okay, I can listen through a lens of just being offended because of the manner in which he did it.
Yeah.
Or I can listen to it through and go, how much is he poking at something that God's irritated by? And I'm going, boom, he just nailed that, and that. These things are not acceptable, and he's calling them out.
Yeah.
Go God.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you go, well, God can't work. God works through everything.
Yeah.
And so to me, the idea of saying, I'm going to take a biblical worldview, place it over that, and then begin to sort.
Right.
That's kind of how I engage with stuff. What about you? What do you have?
No,
any thoughts?
I think that's really important, and ultimately it comes down to me, it's a question of discipleship, right? My ability to engage with the world as a Christian depends on what is discipling me, right? If I'm spending more time and energy reading the news than I am investing in a biblical worldview, then I'm going to have a worldview that is bent by what I read in the news, which has its own, challenges, right? And I'm going to engage with the world in that manner. If I'm paying attention to highly partisan, Republican or conservative or liberal stuff, I'm going to have a conservative view of the world or a liberal view of the world as opposed to a biblical view of the world.
Right.
Which I don't mean to present biblical as in between those two things. I think it's entirely different. So I think that, number one, if we're going to engage with anything we see as Christians, it's a matter of discipleship. What are we allowing to influence us the most, which is a live issue in my life and in your life and in everyone else's life. And then from there, I think it is reasonable people can disagree and come to different conclusions on, okay, so how much attention do we give to these things? Because our attention is limited. How much attention would I have given to the Golden Globes if we weren't going to do a podcast about it? To be honest, not a ton, probably.
Not a lot.
So I'm not sitting here to say, oh, hey, you got to watch the Golden Globes so that you can be, culturally relevant and this and that. Like, hi, I'm a hypocrite, right? That's what that would communicate. But I do think there is some balance that we need to strike between, like you said, not simply staying where the light is all the time and recognizing what is going on out in the world. What are issues that people care about? If we can get past some of the challenging ways in which issues are presented, where is God's heart? I love what you said. Like, kind of, where is God's heart represented in what I'm seeing? Does God care about climate change? Does God care about injustice? Does God care about these different issues that are circulating? And again, reasonable people can come to different conclusions about those things. But I think to recognize them and to care about them and to think deeply about them and to pray and be like, God, is there something in me that you are wanting to change or transform through what I'm observing in culture? Not so that we're becoming like culture, but so that God might even somehow use culture to draw us closer to his heart. Now, I'm resisting the urge to give a million caveats to everything that I just said. So there's wisdom that has to come down to all of that. But, I think those are just some general principles that we can use when we're engaging in whatever areas of culture interest us the most or whatever areas of culture are relevant to people that we're seeking to influence.
I think the other thing, and I don't want to encourage the demon behind every rock concept, but there's also an idea of looking out at culture and just being wise about where the enemy is advancing things.
Yeah.
For example, not just going with the obvious. It was interesting. One of the things in 2017 when they were highlighting a bunch of stuff about equal pay.
Yeah.
And they're like, Jennifer Lawrence, came out and was, talking about the need for equal pay. Yeah. That's really awesome. Because how could a woman ever live on $52 million a year? Right? And like that.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the outlandish amount of money.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, I go, did the Lord just call something out in terms of materialism? Because everybody wants to go, oh, well, I saw this agenda, that's the enemy. And you go, well, don't you think that the enemy might be a little bit more subtle than that? Don't you think that maybe God was just trying to expose something real quick, real fast, and going, the amount of money we're talking about and that inability to share and be part of the kingdom of God, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
Where we're so ready to attack the big issues.
Right.
And you go, the enemy slipped one in and God called him out on it.
Right.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think just being able to have a sensitivity not only to what God's doing, but also a sensitivity to go, the enemy doesn't get to just come through without with a pass.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold it accountable and go, nope.
Yeah.
Not on my watch.
That's not it. So good. All right. Well, there we go. What we learned from the Golden Globes.
Did that really take an hour?
That really took an hour. I feel like there's so much more that could be said as usual, but we'll call it there. If you watched, hope you enjoyed it. And more than that, I hope that maybe this episode might inspire you as you're consuming media or sports or whatever it is that you're into, that you would perhaps view these things a little bit more critically, not in the sense of trying to be negative, but in the sense of really trying to understand what it is you're looking at, what you're viewing, how our faith influences the way that we think about and respond to all of these sorts of issues. So that's it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks for another episode of Engaging Culture.